All right, friend. Welcome to Mazzaroth. I hope you got your pen ready. I hope you got your specified notebook ready to take notes as we journey together, learning the creator of the cosmos, his messages, his communication through his creation of the stars. We're going to begin with origins. The best way to begin any kind of journey understanding something semi-thoroughly is to understand from the foundation, the launching pad, if you will, the launching moment, the diving board. It's got to be origins. How did all this stuff get started? Where was the origins? Well, we've known for all historical accounts, we see that using the stars and astronomical configurations were highly important, highly valuable. A lot of cultures depended on the accurate record-keeping ability of their astronomers and those who understood the measurements of the stars for navigation purpose, for agricultural purpose. You see, if Joe was on the astronomical team to figure out the seasons and the stars and sun, moon, and planets and all this stuff, if Joe was hired on the agricultural team to figure all this out, if he was off on his measurements and they planted wrong, they would reap wrong. Therefore, the society would suffer during harvest. What does that mean? Fire Joe. Get rid of Joe. We need someone else who can take care of these records and keep it in order. Why? Because people like to eat. Well, people enjoy trade and travel. So you would have firmly fixed points in the night sky to travel by and to take measurements. How do you know if you're going north or south? Where's Polaris? Where's the constellations? And so as travel increased and as agriculture increased, so did the record-keeping abilities of sun, moon, and stars. And then as you had neighboring societies and civilizations, they shared records with each other to improve each other's systems of agriculture and trade. In the nautical world, they have it's called shooting the stars, right? So in submarine life, they didn't have GPSs back in the day, so they would go on a submarine. They would do it the periscope, look at where there's Orion, there's Taurus, there's Gemini. And so they would find constellations and stars and measure the distances in between. And that would let them know if they were going north, south, east, west, how far they've gone. They didn't have GPS records or anything like that to go by. They had the stars to go by. Well, in the origins of the Babylonian Empire, we find that Nebuchadnezzar, he put a man in charge, a very unique man. So when you take astronomical records from the Babylonian Empire, it goes all the way back to where there's a unique story of where Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the Babylonian Empire, who conquered tons of land, there's a special moment where he was introduced to a supernatural person who was actually one of the Jewish captives. His name was Daniel. He was a prophet. And he so impressed Nebuchadnezzar with his spiritual abilities and understanding dreams, visions, and calculation of the stars that he actually put him over all of the astronomers, the astrologers, all the supernatural people. He made, called the wise men, he put Daniel over all of them. As a matter of fact, the wise men, or the magi, which is short for Magian, not magicians, but Magian, it's a special group of like these kings, these royalty, like ambassador, like people who dealt with judicial affairs, among the nations. The way they knew that Jesus the Messiah was born, remember that it says that they saw his star alignment in the east, and they knew that the King of the Jews would be born. How do they know that? Well, they were passed down teachings. Their great-grandfathers, if you do the timelines, their great-grandfathers were taught by Daniel himself during the Babylonian captivity of the Jewish people. So Daniel taught his disciples wonderful things concerning the stars. As a matter of fact, he calculated the day that Jesus would be riding on a donkey into Jerusalem to be revealed as Messiah. And that's in the book of Daniel in the Torah. But so we have the origins of Babylonian record-keeping ability of stars, highly influenced by a Jewish person. We also have the Egyptian Empire, highly influenced by another Jewish prophet by the name of Joseph. You see, before the Exodus, long time before, we're talking nearly a millennia before, we're talking, hundreds and hundreds of years before the Exodus, the account of Moses and the Jewish people leaving Egyptian slavery, Joseph was put over all societal sciences. All the civics were ran by this young man named Joseph, who had special understanding of dreams, visions, and the stars, just like Daniel. So the Egyptian Empire got their early astronomical influences from a Jewish guy by the name of Joseph. He was put over all the institutions, and so he helped regulate the record-keeping abilities of the sun, moon, and stars, times and seasons, and he had a special understanding of when to reap, harvest, and sow and reap and things of that nature. He helped the whole region survive through a 7-year plan of sowing and reaping, and that helped them through the 7-year famine that the whole territory was under. Of course, all that came through a dream. Most of you are familiar with the story. Fancy enough. Joseph, Egyptian Empire, the Exodus. Here's a map. If you're going to look here on this map, where the land of Goshen is, that whole area. If you notice where in the Bible where Moses took the children of Israel and they left Goshen, that's the land where they lived in during their time. They're in the northeast corner of Egypt. There's the Nile River, you see that? Well, look where it says Cairo. You see that? So there's Goshen, there's Cairo. Now let's look at this other map. Cairo. You know where the pyramids of Giza are? Right there. Right there, Cairo. You see that? The pyramids, they were built high. They're observatories. You got to be above light pollution. And so what happens is they're able to keep their record-keeping ability of sun, moon, and stars there. So where the Jewish people, remember Joseph, he welcomed his people in, the Jewish people in, and they built their families there. They had all the specific area they called Goshen, and that's where the astronomical records were kept. This is where Joseph taught the people the astronomical renderings of the stars. Pretty cool. Psalm 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky proclaims his handiwork. Handiwork. So handiwork is a fancy term. Handiwork helps you embrace the concept of creativity. One's creation. If the handiwork is impressive, that reveals the genius of the creator, of that creation, of that invention, of that piece of handiwork. The sculptor, the builder, the more impressive they are, the more impressive the work is. Well, if the skies and the heavens above proclaim the handiwork, this reveals the genius of God. So when you look at the night sky, when you observe Mazzaroth, you are going to behold the genius of the creator of the cosmos. Impressive skill goes into a well-designed invention. The handiwork, the greater the craftsman, the greater the masterpiece. So the greater the grandeur and precision and architectural beauty of the heavens, it only reveals one thing, friend. The greater the grandeur and majestic beauty of its creator. You see, man can manipulate an AI algorithm, but he cannot manipulate the sun, moon, and stars. The heavens remain pure and undefiled, this rendering of God's handiwork. Friend, Hebrews chapter 1 verse 3 tells us that the expression of God's glory is the Son of God. So the glory of God is the expression of His Son. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in Him all things were created, things in heaven, things on earth, visible and invisible, whether it be thrones or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through Him and for Him. Scripture teaches us that all of creation was made by the Son of God, for the Son of God, and points to the Son of God, who is the glory of God, and that with specific emphasis on the heavens. Wow. Friend, everything communicated in the night sky is to point to the glory of God, which is the revealing of the Son of God. This is going to get really good. So most scholars, they put the time of Moses around 1500 BC, without argument. It's around 1500 BC. Moses was the one who wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. His authorship is attributed to the first 5 books of the Bible. 90% of scholars worldwide will tell you and I that the book of Job, the writings of Job, was before the time of Moses. Check this out. Job 38 declares these words: "Can you bind the chains of Pleiades or loose the cords of Orion? Can you bring forth the Mazzaroth, or constellations, in their seasons, or lead out the bear with his cubs?" That's Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the bear. "Do you know the laws of the heavens? Can you set up God's dominion over the earth?" Wow, friend. Job records in Job 38, we have Pleiades, we have Orion, we have Ursa Major, Minor, the bear and its cubs. In Job 9, we have recorded these words: Arcturus, Orion, and Pleiades, mentioned in Job 9. The writings of Job was before the time of Moses. So here's Orion, Arcturus, Pleiades, all within the zodiacal wheel of the Mazzaroth. What does this tell you and I? Friend, this tells us that before the time of Moses, during the time of Job, there was already God-named constellations in human awareness. Friends, most of human existence, for all of recorded time, of what we can call as history, actual authenticated, documented history, most of this was already aware of God-named constellations, God-named stars. Wow. A little bit after the flood, there was already the mentioning of Orion, Arcturus, Pleiades. How amazing. Lift up your eyes on high and see who created these. He who brings out their hosts by number, calling them all by name, by the greatness of his might, and because he is strong in power, not one is missing. Isaiah 40, verse 26. Not one is missing. He's the one who calls the stars by name. Not you, not me. The inspiration, we're going to come to find out in our journey together that a lot of the inspiration of naming the stars the way they were was God ordained. It's beautiful tapestry, beautiful handiwork, intelligent strategy to give a message, to communicate to you and I special things. God called stars and constellations by name thousands of years before pagan mythology and pagan astrology. Evil men didn't create the names of the stars, God did. The image of connecting stars together, that was God's idea, not man's. Now, over time, man would, that were not God-fearing, perverted and twisted things, but in its origin, constellations, their names, and a higher purpose of their communication, it was beyond some man's idea and something perverted to worship other gods and all that stuff. Its origin is pure. The rendering of the messages of Mazzaroth are pure and undefiled. By Moses' time, many culture groups took the approach of observing the stars into divination practice, idolatry, furthering mankind from the creator of our universe. Their ungodly practices and approaches were called, the English word is astrology, by Moses, which God gave grave warnings against his people to engage in. Jeremiah chapter 8 and Deuteronomy chapter 4 both give us severe warnings of approaching the stars the way the ungodly pagans do, the way other cultures do. Their way is perverted, it's twisted, their stories are different, they have a different approach to the stars. They have a weird idolatry worship system that's been twisted. So this is why the Jewish people handed down to Christians that our approach to understanding God's communication with stars has to be different. And so the term astrology itself, ology, like biology, study of the bio, right, the living. Astrology, study of the stars. So we have astronomy and astrology. Centuries ago, it was put together. But because certain cultures put more of an emphasis on interpretive individualistic and fortune telling, they kind of divided up the science of astrology, astronomy, and then they have the word astrology just kind of coupled in with this the interpretive practice for kings and things of that nature. So originally, the practices of the Jewish communities was that of Issachar and Levi were the tribes that were given over to understanding and the calculating and the record keeping. So who kept up with all the star records? Issachar. the tribe of Issachar, and the Levites, because they had to know when to blow the shofars for new moons and things of that nature. So you had two people groups that were responsible for the record keeping of